My name is Emma Richardson, and I'm 34 years old. The day I walked into my own house and found my husband kissing my sister, I lost my marriage, my family, and almost my sanity. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that 6 months later, they were married. My parents were celebrating them, and everyone treated me like I was the problem. They thought they had won. They thought I would disappear quietly. What they didn't know was that I was waiting. And when the truth finally came out, it destroyed everything they had built. Before I tell you how my sister stole my husband and convinced my entire family to turn against me, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you enjoy revenge stories where justice takes its time, but hits like a freight train. Trust me, this one was worth the wait. I used to think my sister Olivia was the kind of person people envied. Beautiful, confident, the center of every room she entered. If she walked into a restaurant, heads turned. If she attended a party, conversations shifted toward her. People seemed magnetically drawn to her. Growing up, I spent most of my life standing in her shadow. Olivia was 3 years younger than me, but somehow she always got more attention. When she got a B in school, my parents praised her effort. When I got straight A's, they asked why one of them wasn't an A+. When she forgot a birthday, everyone laughed and called her absent-minded. When I forgot one, people acted like I'd committed a crime. For years, I told myself I was imagining it. Families aren't supposed to play favorites. At least, that's what people say. But deep down, I knew. I always knew. Olivia was the golden child. And I was the dependable one. The one expected to understand. The one expected to sacrifice. The one expected to forgive. By the time we reached adulthood, I'd accepted that reality. I wasn't bitter. At least I didn't think I was. I built my own life. I became a project manager at a medical software company. I bought a house. I created stability. And at 28, I met Daniel. At first, he seemed like everything I'd ever wanted. He was charming without being arrogant, funny without trying too hard. The kind of man who remembered tiny details, the kind of man who made you feel seen. We met at a friend's barbecue. I still remember standing beside the drink cooler while he made some terrible joke about overcooked hamburgers. I laughed. He laughed. And somehow we spent 4 hours talking. One date became three. Three became 10. Within a year, we were inseparable. When he proposed, I cried. Not because I was surprised, because for the first time in my life, I felt chosen. Not second place, not the backup option, chosen. The wedding was beautiful, small, simple, perfect. And Olivia stood beside me as maid of honor. Funny, isn't it? Looking back now, I can see things I missed. Little moments, tiny warning signs. The way she touched Daniel's arm a little too often. The way she laughed at every joke he made. The way her eyes lingered. At the time, I dismissed it. Because who suspects their own sister? Who looks at their husband and sibling and thinks betrayal? Nobody wants to believe that. So I didn't. The first 4 years of marriage were good. Not perfect. No marriage is. We argued about bills, household chores, vacation plans, normal things. Nothing alarming. Nothing that suggested my entire life was about to collapse. Then Olivia moved back to town. That was the beginning. She'd ended another relationship, another dramatic breakup, another story where somehow she was completely innocent. She started visiting often, too often. At first, I was happy. She was my sister. Despite everything, I loved her. Sometimes she'd stop by 3 or 4 times a week. Sometimes she'd stay for dinner. Sometimes she'd stay late. Very late. There were moments that bothered me. Tiny moments. Daniel and Olivia sharing private jokes, texting each other, talking when they thought I wasn't paying attention. Every time I noticed, I immediately felt guilty. I told myself I was paranoid. insecure, overthinking, because the alternative was unthinkable. Then came the day everything shattered. I remember every detail, every second. It was a Thursday, rainy, cold. I left work early because I had a migraine, the kind that makes light feel like knives behind your eyes. I drove home in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the sound of rain hitting the windshield. When I pulled into the driveway, Daniel's car was there. So was Olivia's. I frowned. She wasn't supposed to be visiting, but I didn't think much of it. I unlocked the front door, stepped inside, and heard laughter. Their laughter. Coming from the living room. Then silence. A strange silence. The kind that instantly makes your stomach drop. I walked forward, slowly, and turned the corner. For a second, my brain refused to process what I was seeing. Daniel's hands were on her waist. Olivia's arms were around his neck, their mouths pressed together. Kissing. Not a mistake. Not an accident. Not confusion. A kiss practiced many times before. The room started spinning. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't move. Then Olivia saw me. Her eyes widened. Daniel turned. The color drained from his face. Nobody spoke. For several seconds, we simply stared at each other. 3 lives, frozen in a single horrifying moment. Then I whispered one word. How long? Daniel opened his mouth. Closed it. Olivia looked away. And that's when I knew. This wasn't recent. This wasn't spontaneous. This had been happening for a while. Maybe months. Maybe longer. I felt something inside me break. Physically break. Like a bone snapping. How long? I asked again. Daniel finally answered. 8 months. 8 months. 8 months. My knees almost gave out. 8 months of lies. 8 months of family dinners. 8 months of smiles. 8 months of pretending. Olivia actually started crying. Imagine that. The woman sleeping with my husband started crying. Emma, I'm sorry. Don't. My voice sounded unfamiliar. Cold. Sharp. Dangerous. Don't you dare. Daniel stepped forward. I stepped back immediately, like he'd become radioactive. I couldn't stand the thought of him touching me, looking at me, breathing near me. I remember pointing toward the door. Get out. Emma, please listen. Get out. The third time I screamed it, and they left. Together. Not separately. Together. That image stayed with me, them walking out side by side, like a real couple, like I was the outsider. I spent that night sitting on the kitchen floor, not crying, not screaming, just staring. The clock ticked, the refrigerator hummed, rain tapped against the windows, and I sat there wondering how someone survives losing everything in a single afternoon. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I barely moved. The next morning, my phone exploded. Messages, calls, voicemails, family members, friends, everyone. At first, I thought people were calling to support me. I was wrong. Very wrong. Because Olivia had gotten there first. And she'd told her version of the story. A version where she and Daniel had fallen in love. A version where my marriage had supposedly been failing for years. A version where she was a victim of circumstances. A version where nobody was truly at fault. The first call from my mother made that painfully clear. Emma, sweetheart, let's be mature about this. Mature? I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound shocked even me. Mature? These things happen. Those 3 words changed something inside me. These things happen. As if my sister stealing my husband was a scheduling conflict. As if betrayal was weather. As if devastation was normal. I hung up. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't only losing my husband. I was losing my family too. And I had no idea just how bad things were about to get. The first few weeks after discovering the affair felt less like living and more like surviving. Every morning, I'd wake up for a split second forgetting what had happened. Then reality would hit, like a hammer. Daniel was gone. My marriage was over. My sister had betrayed me. And somehow, unbelievably, my family was siding with them. Those first mornings were the worst. You know that feeling when you miss a step walking downstairs? That sudden drop in your stomach? Imagine living with that sensation 24 hours a day. That's what it felt like. I lost nearly 15 pounds. Food tasted like cardboard. Sleep became a stranger. Most nights I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling while my mind replayed the same questions over and over. How long had they been laughing behind my back? How many family dinners had been a performance? How many times had Olivia hugged me after spending time with my husband? The questions never stopped, and the answers only hurt more. The divorce process began quickly, far too quickly, almost like Daniel had already prepared for it, which, looking back, he probably had. The man who once promised to love me forever suddenly spoke to me through lawyers. The man who cried during our wedding vows suddenly treated our marriage like an expired contract. Every email felt like another knife. Every document felt like proof that the life I'd built had never been as solid as I'd believed. Then came the family gathering, the first one after the affair became public. I almost didn't go. My best friend Rachel begged me not to. "You don't owe them anything." She was right. But part of me still hoped. Maybe my parents would realize how insane this was. Maybe they'd come to their senses. Maybe they'd choose me. God, I was stupid. The gathering was at my parents' house, the same house where Olivia and I had grown up, the same dining room where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays, the same backyard where we'd played as children. I remember sitting in my car outside for nearly 10 minutes before going inside, trying to prepare myself, trying to be strong, trying not to cry. The moment I entered, conversation stopped. Not completely, just enough for me to notice. That uncomfortable pause people make when they're pretending everything is normal. I scanned the room, and there they were, Daniel and Olivia, together, standing beside the kitchen island, laughing, smiling, comfortable, like nothing had happened, like they hadn't detonated my life. Olivia was wearing one of my favorite colors, a soft green dress. I hated that I noticed. I hated that I remembered. I hated that part of me was still comparing myself to her. My mother rushed over, too cheerful, artificially cheerful, the kind of cheerful people use when they want to avoid reality. "Emma, you made it." I looked at her, then at Olivia, then back at her. "You invited them?" My mother's smile faded slightly. "Of course. Of course." I should have expected that answer. Then came the sentence that haunted me for months. "Sweetheart, we're all family." Family. That word suddenly felt disgusting. I looked around the room. Nobody met my eyes. Not my father, not my aunt, not my cousins. Nobody. Because acknowledging what was happening would require courage. And courage was in short supply that day. The dinner itself was torture. Every laugh from Olivia felt deliberate. Every smile from Daniel felt insulting. Every casual conversation felt surreal. At one point, I excused myself to the bathroom just to breathe. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the bathtub, and stared at my reflection. I looked exhausted, older, broken. For the first time, I wondered if they'd actually won. Maybe this was it. Maybe the world simply rewarded selfish people. Maybe good people really did finish last. The thought terrified me, because if I accepted it, then everything I believed about fairness would disappear. When I returned to the dining room, things somehow got worse. My father stood and tapped his glass. Everyone turned toward him. A speech. Fantastic. I remember the knot forming in my stomach. Then he smiled. At Olivia and Daniel. My family has gone through some changes recently. No, please don't. Not this. But sometimes life takes unexpected paths. I could barely breathe. And all we can do is support the people we love. Then he raised his glass, to them, to my sister, to my husband. The room followed. Glasses lifted. Smiles spread. Congratulations filled the air. I sat there frozen, watching my own family celebrate my replacement. I wish I could tell you I stood up dramatically, that I gave some powerful speech, that I put everyone in their place. I didn't. I simply left, quietly, because some pain is too large for anger. Some pain just empties you. Outside, I got into my car, closed the door, and finally cried. The ugly kind of crying, the kind that leaves your chest aching, the kind that feels like grief. Because that's exactly what it was. Grief. The death of a family. The death of trust. The death of the person I used to be. 6 months after the affair was exposed, Daniel proposed to Olivia. 6 months. That's all it took. 6 months after destroying my marriage. 6 months after shattering my life. And suddenly, they were engaged. My mother posted photos online. My father commented congratulations. Relatives filled the comment section with heart emojis and blessings. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Then I closed the app. Because every picture felt like emotional self-harm. I started avoiding everyone. Family gatherings, holiday dinners, birthday parties. Gone. People assumed I was bitter. Maybe I was. But bitterness wasn't the whole story. The truth was simpler. I was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of watching people reward betrayal. Tired of being expected to smile while standing in the ruins of my own life. The loneliness was crushing. Weekends became especially difficult. Silence filled the house. Every room contained memories. The couch where Daniel and I watched movies. The kitchen where we'd danced while cooking dinner. The bedroom where we'd planned our future. Ghosts. Everywhere. Some nights I'd walk through the house turning on lights simply because darkness made the emptiness feel bigger. Rachel remained my lifeline. Without her, I'm not sure I would have made it through that year. She listened. Never judged. Never pressured me to forgive. One night, about 8 months after everything happened, she asked a question that changed my life. We were sitting on her balcony drinking wine. The city lights glowed below us. A warm breeze moved through the air. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Do you ever feel like something doesn't add up?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" She swirled her glass, thinking. "I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy." "Rachel," she sighed. "The timeline." "What timeline?" "Their timeline." I stared at her. She leaned forward. "You caught them 8 months into the affair." "Yeah. And 6 months later, they got engaged." "So?" "So, who moves that fast after destroying 2 families?" I shrugged. "People in love?" She gave me a look. "No." Something about her tone caught my attention. Rachel wasn't the conspiracy theory type. She wasn't dramatic. She was practical. Careful. Thoughtful. "What are you saying?" She hesitated, then spoke quietly. "I think this started earlier than they're admitting." The words hit me harder than I expected, because deep down I'd suspected the same thing. But suspicion isn't proof, and proof matters. I stared into my wine glass. "What difference does it make now?" Rachel looked directly at me. "Maybe none." Then she paused. "Or maybe all the difference in the world." I didn't know it then. But that conversation would become the first domino, the tiny shift that started everything. A week later, another strange thing happened. I received a message from someone I barely knew, a woman named Jennifer. Her profile picture looked vaguely familiar. At first I assumed it was spam. Then I read the message. Hi Emma. This is awkward. I think we need to talk about Daniel. My stomach dropped instantly. I replied within seconds. What about Daniel? The response came almost immediately. Can we meet in person? That night I barely slept. Every possible scenario raced through my mind. The next afternoon we met at a small coffee shop across town. Jennifer looked nervous, the kind of nervous that makes people constantly check the door. After a few minutes of uncomfortable small talk, she finally got to the point. Daniel dated my sister. I frowned. Okay. 3 years ago. Still confused. Okay? Jennifer swallowed, then lowered her voice. My sister wasn't the only woman. A chill crawled up my spine. What are you talking about? She looked at me with genuine sympathy, the kind people show when they're about to ruin your day. Daniel cheated on her. I stared, silent. He had multiple affairs. I felt my pulse quicken. No. Jennifer nodded slowly. She caught him. The room suddenly felt smaller, louder, hotter. Everything seemed off balance. Are you sure? Jennifer pulled out her phone, opened several screenshots, messages, photos, dates, evidence, real evidence. I stared at the screen, unable to speak, unable to process. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me, he'd done this before. And somehow, Olivia either didn't know or didn't care. Then Jennifer said something that made every hair on my arm stand up. There's one more thing. I looked up. The timeline. There was that word again. Timeline. She continued. My sister met Daniel years before you did. I nodded slowly. So? Jennifer hesitated, then said the sentence that changed everything. He was already talking to Olivia back then. My heart stopped. Not literally, but close. Close enough that I felt the world tilt beneath me. What? Jennifer nodded. I didn't know who she was at the time, but when I saw engagement photos online, I recognized her immediately. I stared at her, unable to blink, unable to think, because suddenly an impossible possibility was forming. A possibility that explained everything. What if the affair wasn't 8 months old? What if the lies went back years? What if my sister hadn't stolen my husband? What if she'd been playing a much longer game? And if that was true, then the perfect life she'd built was standing on a foundation of lies. I just needed proof. And for the first time in over a year, I wasn't grieving anymore. I was hunting. People always imagine revenge begins with rage, a slammed fist, a screaming match, some dramatic declaration. They're wrong. The most effective revenge begins with silence, with patience, with observation, with the moment you stop reacting and start thinking. For over a year after the affair, I had been drowning, reacting, surviving, hurting. But after my conversation with Jennifer, something shifted. For the first time since discovering Daniel and Olivia together, I felt focused. The pain was still there. The betrayal was still there. But now there was something else. Purpose. I wasn't interested in destroying their lives. Not yet. I wanted the truth. The complete truth. Because deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Too many pieces didn't fit. Too many timelines overlapped. Too many coincidences existed. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized something disturbing. Olivia had always wanted what belonged to other people. Growing up, if I bought a new jacket, she'd suddenly want the same one. If I became friends with someone, she'd find a way to insert herself into the friendship. If I received praise for something, she'd somehow redirect attention toward herself. At the time, those things seemed childish, normal sibling rivalry. Now they looked different. Now they looked like a pattern, and patterns matter. The following weekend, I pulled out old photo albums. Not because I expected to find anything, just because I couldn't stop thinking about the timeline. The albums covered years of family gatherings, birthdays, Christmases, barbecues, vacations, hundreds of photos. Hours passed. Then I noticed something. A photo from 5 years earlier, long before my wedding, long before Daniel supposedly knew Olivia well. Yet there she was, standing beside him, looking at him, not casually, not accidentally, looking at him the way people look at someone they want. I stared at the picture, then another, and another. The same expression, the same body language, the same strange intensity. My stomach tightened. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe grief was making me paranoid. But once you see something, it's difficult to unsee it. I began digging deeper. Social media, old comments, tagged photos, archived posts, every digital breadcrumb I could find. The deeper I looked, the stranger things became. Years before the affair supposedly started, Olivia had been interacting with Daniel online. Nothing obvious, nothing scandalous, just enough to raise questions, comments, likes, inside jokes. Small interactions spread across years, tiny threads connecting them long before anyone admitted they were close. I created a notebook, a physical notebook. Dates, events, screenshots, observations. At first it felt ridiculous, like something from a crime documentary. But every week brought another piece, another inconsistency, another lie. Then came the breakthrough. Pure accident. The kind of accident that changes everything. I was cleaning out a closet when I found an old external hard drive, one Daniel used years ago. Most of the files were useless. Tax documents, photos, random backups. Then I discovered a folder labeled Archive. Inside were thousands of old emails. Most were boring. Work messages, receipts, subscriptions. Nothing important. Until I found one. A message from Olivia, sent nearly 6 years earlier. I remember the exact moment, the exact feeling. My pulse hammering in my ears, my hands shaking, because the email wasn't friendly. It wasn't sisterly. It wasn't innocent. It was flirtatious, openly flirtatious. And Daniel had replied, not shutting her down, not establishing boundaries, flirting back. 6 years, 6 years. The affair hadn't started 8 months before I caught them. It had started before my marriage, possibly before my engagement, maybe before our relationship became serious. I sat frozen in my office chair, reading the messages again and again, trying to convince myself I misunderstood. But there was no misunderstanding. The evidence was right there. Black letters on a white screen. Undeniable. I felt sick. Not angry. Not yet. Sick. Because suddenly my entire marriage looked different. Every anniversary, every vacation, every milestone, contaminated. I spent the next month gathering evidence carefully, methodically. I didn't tell anyone, not even Rachel. The fewer people who knew, the better. And as the evidence accumulated, the picture became horrifyingly clear. Olivia hadn't fallen in love with my husband. She'd pursued him. For years. She'd inserted herself into our relationship long before I realized there was a problem. The affair wasn't an accident. It wasn't fate. It wasn't two people unexpectedly connecting. It was deliberate, calculated, patient. And Daniel? Daniel was worse. Because unlike Olivia, he had made vows, promises, commitments. He knew exactly what he was doing. One evening, I sat alone at my dining room table surrounded by papers, screenshots, printouts, dates, notes. The evidence looked overwhelming. More than enough to expose them. More than enough to embarrass them. More than enough to destroy their reputations. Yet I didn't move. I simply stared. Because another realization had arrived. The truth alone wouldn't be enough. Not for my family, not for people who had already chosen a side. People rarely abandon a narrative willingly, especially when admitting they were wrong makes them uncomfortable. No, if I wanted accountability, timing mattered, presentation mattered, proof mattered, and most importantly, witnesses mattered. That's when I learned about the anniversary party. Technically, it wasn't an anniversary. It was a celebration. 1 year of marriage. Olivia wanted something extravagant. Of course she did. A large venue, dozens of guests, family, friends, co-workers, everyone. A public display of success, the perfect life, the perfect couple, the perfect ending. The moment I heard about the event, I knew. That was it. That was the moment. Not because I wanted revenge. At least that's what I told myself. But the truth? Part of me absolutely wanted revenge. After everything they'd done, after the humiliation, after the lies, after being treated like collateral damage, I wanted the truth to arrive where it couldn't be ignored. The months leading up to the celebration were strangely peaceful, on the surface anyway. Internally, I was carrying a secret, a very dangerous secret. Meanwhile, Olivia's life appeared flawless. Social media photos, luxury vacations, romantic captions, smiling family portraits, every image carefully curated, every post designed to communicate happiness, success, victory. Sometimes I'd see relatives commenting beneath her photos. Beautiful couple. So happy for you both. Perfect together. The irony almost made me laugh because I knew what they didn't. I knew the foundation beneath that perfect life was rotting. Then something unexpected happened. My mother called. We hadn't spoken properly in months. The conversation started awkwardly. Forced politeness, uncomfortable pauses. Then she got to the point. You should come to Olivia's celebration. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I asked, why? Silence, then a sigh. Because she's your sister. There it was again. Family. Always family. Always the responsibility flowing in one direction, never toward me, always toward them. I stared out my window, watching rain slide down the glass. Then I asked a question I'd been carrying for nearly 2 years. Did you ever care what happened to me? Silence. Long silence. Painful silence. My mother finally answered. Of course I did. But it sounded weak, uncertain, like even she didn't fully believe it. I closed my eyes, and for the first time I stopped wanting her approval, stopped needing it, stopped chasing something she was never going to give me. That realization was oddly liberating, because once you stop seeking validation from people who refuse to provide it, they lose power over you. The celebration approached. 3 weeks. 2 weeks. 1 week. I reviewed the evidence constantly, not because I doubted it, because I wanted certainty. No mistakes, no assumptions, no exaggerations, only facts. Cold, undeniable facts. The night before the event, I barely slept, not from anxiety, from anticipation. I kept imagining different outcomes. Maybe nobody would care. Maybe they'd dismiss everything. Maybe I'd be painted as the bitter ex-wife. That possibility worried me. But another possibility existed too. What if the truth was finally stronger than the lies? The next morning, Rachel came over. She immediately noticed my tension. You okay? I smiled. A small smile. The first genuine smile she'd seen from me in a very long time. I think so. She studied me, then asked quietly, Are you sure you want to do this? I considered the question. Really considered it. Because revenge sounds satisfying in theory. Reality is messier, riskier, permanent. Finally, I nodded. Yes. Rachel looked at me for a long moment. then smiled. Good. I raised an eyebrow. Good? She laughed softly. Emma, they've been writing your story for 2 years. She squeezed my hand. Maybe it's time you tell your version. That afternoon I got dressed. Simple black dress, minimal makeup, nothing dramatic, nothing attention-seeking. I didn't want to look like someone seeking revenge. I wanted to look like someone carrying the truth. Because that's exactly what I was. As I drove toward the venue, my heartbeat remained surprisingly steady. The fear was gone. The grief was gone. Even the anger felt distant. What remained was clarity. For 2 years, Olivia had believed she won. For 2 years, Daniel had believed the past was buried. For 2 years, my family had chosen comfort over reality. In less than an hour, all of that was about to change. And none of them had the slightest idea. The venue looked exactly the way Olivia would have wanted. Elegant, expensive, perfect. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, scattering warm golden light across white tablecloths and polished glass. Soft music drifted through the room. Servers moved between guests carrying champagne. Every detail screamed success. Every detail screamed victory. And as I walked inside, I could immediately tell Olivia was enjoying every second of it. She stood near the center of the room in a designer dress, laughing as guests surrounded her. Daniel stood beside her, one arm around her waist, smiling, comfortable, confident. The image of a happy husband. For a moment, I simply watched them, not with anger, not with jealousy, just observation. It was strange. 2 years earlier, seeing them together would have shattered me. Now I felt almost attached, like I was looking at strangers, because the people I had loved didn't actually exist. The husband I thought I married wasn't real. The sister I thought I knew wasn't real. They were characters, masks, stories. And tonight, those stories were about to end. Olivia spotted me first. The surprise on her face lasted only a fraction of a second. Then her smile returned. That polished social smile she'd mastered years ago. The smile that convinced people she was sweet. The smile that hid who she really was. Emma, she approached carefully, like someone approaching a wild animal. I didn't think you'd come. I smiled. A calm smile. I changed my mind. Something in my tone seemed to bother her. I saw it immediately. A flicker of discomfort. Tiny. Almost invisible. But it was there. Good. For the next hour, I played my role. I greeted relatives, made small talk, accepted polite conversation, and watched. Mostly watched. Because when people think they've won, they become careless. And careless people reveal things. I noticed my parents moving proudly through the crowd, introducing Daniel and Olivia to guests, telling stories, laughing, looking happier than I'd seen them in years. That hurt. More than I expected. Not because I wanted to ruin their happiness, because I realized how little effort they'd made to understand mine. Still, I pushed the feeling aside. Tonight wasn't about emotion. Tonight was about truth. Eventually, the speeches began. The room settled. Guests took their seats. Wine glasses clinked softly. A microphone was brought to the center of the room. My father spoke first. His speech was exactly what you'd expect. Family, love, second chances, finding happiness. He spoke about Olivia and Daniel as if their relationship had emerged from some romantic movie, as if no destruction had occurred, as if no one had been hurt. People applauded. Then my mother spoke, then a few friends. Every speech painted the same picture, a beautiful love story, a destined relationship, a happy ending. And with each speech I felt something strange, not anger, certainty, because every lie made what came next more necessary. Finally, Olivia stood, holding a champagne glass, smiling brightly. The room quieted immediately. She loved attention, always had, and she was very good at commanding it. I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Applause, laughter, smiles. She continued. Life doesn't always happen the way we expect. Several people nodded. I know our journey wasn't conventional. A few chuckles. But sometimes love finds a way. The irony almost made me choke. Love, that's what she called it. Love, not betrayal, not manipulation, not deception. Love. Then she looked directly at Daniel. Her eyes softened, or pretended to. And every difficult choice led us here. The room practically melted. People adored it. I could see it in their faces. They were eating it up. The romance, the redemption, the fantasy. Then she raised her glass. To new beginnings. Applause erupted. People stood, glasses lifted. Cheers echoed through the room. And that's when I stood up. At first, nobody noticed. Then a few people turned. The applause faded slightly. Olivia looked confused. I smiled politely. Can I say something? The room became quiet. My father looked uneasy. My mother looked nervous. Daniel looked irritated. Olivia looked concerned. Interesting. Very concerned. She knew me. She knew I wasn't impulsive. And that worried her. The microphone was handed to me. It felt surprisingly light. I looked around the room, at relatives, friends, co-workers, people who had believed the story. Then I spoke. Olivia's right. The room remained silent. Life doesn't always happen the way we expect. A few people nodded. I continued. 2 years ago, I walked into my living room and found my husband kissing my sister. Instant tension. You could feel it. Like electricity. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. Others looked down. The atmosphere changed immediately. Good. Most of you already know that. Nobody spoke. Most of you also know what happened afterward. I looked toward my parents. Neither met my eyes. Everyone decided it was complicated. Silence. Everyone decided nobody was really to blame. Olivia's smile had disappeared. Daniel's jaw tightened. I continued calmly, very calmly. At first, I believed the affair lasted 8 months. Now Olivia looked genuinely worried, because she knew where this was going, and she knew she couldn't stop it. That was the story I was told. I reached into my purse, removed several printed pages. The room watched, confused, curious, waiting. Then I held up the documents, and it was a lie. Complete silence, the kind of silence that feels physical, heavy, dense. I began reading dates, emails, messages, evidence, years of evidence, not 8 months, not 1 year, years. The timeline stretched back before my engagement, before my wedding, before my marriage. Gasps spread through the room. People exchanged looks. Whispers began. Olivia looked pale. Daniel looked sick. I kept going. Patiently, methodically. No yelling. No dramatics. Just facts. Cold facts. The most devastating kind. Then I delivered the final blow. The piece that truly shattered everything. Because during my investigation, I'd uncovered something even worse. Something neither of them expected me to find. Financial records, hidden accounts, secret transfers, money, lots of money. Money Daniel had been moving for years. Money Olivia knew about. Money they had hidden. Not illegal, but deceptive. Very deceptive, especially because part of that money had originated during our marriage. Money Daniel had repeatedly claimed didn't exist. Money he'd concealed during divorce negotiations. I watched Daniel's face lose all color. That was the moment. The exact moment. Because he realized I knew. And worse. He realized everyone else knew too. The room exploded. Not literally, but emotionally. Questions flew from every direction. People stood. Conversations erupted. Family members looked stunned. Friends looked horrified. Several guests walked away entirely. One of Daniel's business associates left immediately. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. Olivia tried speaking. Nobody listened. She tried explaining. Nobody cared. Because lies are fragile. They require constant protection. Truth doesn't. Truth simply exists. My mother looked devastated. My father looked furious. Not at me, at them. For the first time in 2 years, he finally looked at Olivia the way he should have from the beginning. Not as a victim. Not as a princess. As a grown woman responsible for her choices. And she hated it. You could see it. The loss of control terrified her, because people like Olivia build their identity around perception, around admiration, around image, and her image was collapsing, right there, in real time. Then came the moment I'll never forget. My mother approached me, slowly, almost hesitantly, like she wasn't sure she had the right. Tears filled her eyes. Emma. Just my name. Nothing else. Just my name. But I understood what it meant, because for the first time in 2 years she looked ashamed, truly ashamed. Not embarrassed. Ashamed. And honestly, I didn't feel satisfaction. Not the way I expected. I thought revenge would feel exciting, victorious, triumphant. Instead, it felt quiet, like setting down a heavy suitcase after carrying it for miles. Relief. That's what it was. Relief. The event ended early, very early. Guests left in clusters, whispering, talking, processing. The celebration was over. The fantasy was over. The story was over. Over the following weeks, the fallout spread. Fast. Much faster than I expected. Family members started calling, apologizing. Not all of them, but enough. Several admitted they'd chosen the easier narrative. Several admitted they'd ignored obvious warning signs. Several admitted they'd failed me. My father was one of them. His apology came 3 weeks later. Awkward, emotional, imperfect, but genuine. And sometimes genuine matters more than perfect. As for Daniel and Olivia, things deteriorated quickly. When your relationship begins with deception, trust becomes difficult. When both people know the other is capable of betrayal, paranoia follows. Arguments started. Then accusations. Then public tension. Friends noticed. Family noticed. Everyone noticed. About 9 months later, I heard they'd separated. I wasn't surprised. Not even a little. Because relationships built on stolen foundations rarely remain stable. Especially when the spotlight disappears. Especially when reality arrives. The strangest part? People expected me to celebrate, to gloat, to enjoy it. I didn't. Not really. By then, I'd moved on. I had rebuilt my life, started therapy, made new friends, advanced my career, traveled, laughed again, lived again. The revenge wasn't watching them fall apart. The revenge was surviving, thriving, refusing to let their choices define my future. That's the part nobody tells you. The greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's freedom. And eventually, that's exactly what I found. A few years have passed since everything happened. I still think about it sometimes. Not every day. Not every week. Just occasionally. Usually when someone asks why I don't talk to my sister anymore. Or why certain family photos feel incomplete. And when those memories return, I always reach the same conclusion. Betrayal doesn't destroy people. The lies afterward do. The gaslighting. The excuses. The refusal to acknowledge reality. That's what nearly broke me. Not losing my husband. Not losing my sister. Losing my voice. For a while, everyone told me what the story was supposed to be. They told me who was wrong. Who was right. Who deserved sympathy. Who deserved blame. Eventually, I stopped listening, and when I finally told the truth, everything changed. Not because the truth is magical, because the truth is patient. It waits. And sooner or later, it catches up with everyone, including the people who think they're too clever to face it. As for Olivia, the last thing she ever said to me was this: "You ruined my life." I looked at her for a long moment before answering. Then I said something I'd waited years to say. "No." I shook my head. "You did." And for the first time in my life, I walked away without looking back. If you enjoyed this revenge story and believe that the truth always finds a way to the surface, make sure to like the video, subscribe, and let me know in the comments. What would you have done if your sister stole your spouse and your entire family took her side? And remember, some people spend years building the perfect lie. All it takes is one moment of truth to bring it crashing down.